Well, hi guys, and thanks for coming to our Education and Climate Coalition meeting. Coalition of educators trying to amplify our voices and make all our actions work as hard as they possibly can. So we're so happy to have two wonderful speakers tonight, Louise Edgington and Toby Peach. My name's Kate. Before we get started with our speakers, I'm going to give some very brief updates from the school's point of view. I'm a schools coordinator, been a teacher for 20 years. And then Shana's going to do some updates from HE, the HE sector, and then we're going to move into our speakers. So if you may or may not know, but gosh, I don't even know now, 6 months ago maybe, we wrote this fantastic letter. The Education Climate Coalition wrote this fantastic letter to the last government. We got it delivered to the DFE about the demands we have for the DFE to address very seriously: safeguarding buildings, food, the curriculum. We got it joint signed by many quite impactful organisations. Obviously, the last government did absolutely nothing with it, but we have this thing, this excellent thing, and our idea is to reuse it and to get it made available to individuals with a template that they can email to their MP and give to their MP. Many of who might be new Labour MPs, and say, not new Labour, new Labour MPs, and say, here, this great letter signed by all these organisations. Are you able to take this to Parliament for us? So that's one of our updates. Another update is that a group called Teach the Future have just had a curriculum meeting, and Tess is going to give us a 1-minute briefing on that.
Thank you, Kate. So the meeting was on the 12th of September. It was well attended, about 50 attendees, I think, including Friends of the Earth, people from UEA and UCL and Reading University and the Ministry of Eco-Education, Eden Project. Those are just the ones I can remember. It was a workshop style event giving us the opportunity to review the curriculum and the curriculum and assessment review. We were put in breakout rooms, given sections of the review to comment on, to change the language, and just to add our insights and thoughts to it, with the intention of hoping to influence the DFE's review and its outcomes. And since then, they've sent everyone who was at it an email to remind us all that last week the DFE released a call for evidence regarding this review. And I'm sure lots of people in this meeting have already added their voice to that. And they just encouraged us to tailor our response to our own true beliefs and values and do individual responses.
Thanks, Tess. And so that's the curriculum review that's open at the moment. I'm sure you all know about it. Closes on the 22nd of November. And that's the way I think we can all make our voices heard. And Ian, you said there's an action next week from Teach the Future. Could you just give us the details briefly?
I know that Nadia Whittam is hosting an event in Parliament, Teach the Future, and Let's Go Zero are doing it. I got an email at work from Teach the Future inviting me to write to my MPs and ask them to turn up. I'm frantically looking. Maybe there's a link I can put in the chat, but yeah, everyone's encouraged to ask their MPs to attend.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Well, I'm going to hand over to Shana now for HE updates. Thanks, Shana.
Yeah, thanks, Kate. Yeah, so on the higher education side, at the moment, we're actually organising against insurance companies. There's a brand new group called Insure Tomorrow, who are looking at targeting insurance companies' recruitment on university campuses, because a lot of the insurance companies here in the UK are the ones that are insuring fossil fuel projects, so new pipelines, new explorations. And if these projects don't get insurance, they just don't go ahead. So again, UK students to basically tell these companies, we're not going to work for you if you continue to insure these projects, and you're not welcome on our campuses. So we're recruiting students as well as educators and academic staff and universities to help out with this campaign. It's very closely related to Fossil-Free Careers, which is a People and Planet campaign. And we're actually going to take part in the week of action at the end of October, which is part of Ensure Our Survival, where there's going to be direct action in London at the insurance company's actual HQs. So if you're interested in that, you can get in touch with us and get in touch with me at, I can put my email in the chat specifically for that. But yeah, I think that's the updates from both school and the higher education side. So we're going to pass on to our first speaker, Toby, who's a award-winning theatre maker. Yeah, please take it away.
Fabulous, thank you. I'm just going to share my screen. I should say before I start sharing my screen, I am just on the end of a lovely bout of COVID. So I will try my best to mute myself every time I'm coughing. But apologies if that happens. But yeah, I'm going to share my screen and just let me know, can you now see the title page? Lovely, good, there's some nodding there.
Yes.
So I have a second screen, which is nice. So I'll be looking over here occasionally, but yeah, I will be looking in there. And Shanna's just written in the chat. That was me seeing if I needed to respond to that. So hi everyone. Yeah, so I'm Toby, and I work for a company called Coney. We're an arts and social change charity. We're based in London, but we make work across the UK and across the world. And we have a focus on using play to spark change. So I'm the associate director at Coney. I've been with Coney for around 10 years, and I focus on making work for young people and families. And a lot of that work lands in schools. So I make a lot of projects that are for primary schools, looking at ways that we can use play as a way to talk about the world, changing their world, and also focusing on secondary schools. And also, I should say, just as I look at Shanna, also not just secondary schools, because I've been also working with Shanna at UCL, which I'll talk about a little bit later. A lot of our work is focused around, I'm just ticking on my screen. There we go, great. Playful activism, which is what I'm going to be talking about. And I'll just read this slide because it's nice and easy for me to explain. So Coney's participatory work is rooted in playful activism. This is a specific type of creative activism that uses play as a tool for exploring social change. If activism is the use of direct and noticeable action to achieve a political or social result, playful activism infuses this action with play and creativity. It aims to spark change through play. Lots of theatre organisations and art organisations talk about ways that they try to their participatory practice and what that is. Ours is exactly the same. We're making work to try and have an impact on an audience. Just we use a lovely title called Playful Activism. Some of these are some of the projects that we've worked on through the years. We have a group called the Young Coneys who we regularly work with. Young Coneys are young people who come and are part of a program which explores how they can influence their school system by using playful action. And some of those young Coneys might do pieces that are public facing. This one was all around something that they were passionate about, that we're always focused on the things that they're passionate about. So this piece was about looking at animal welfare. I'm sure you know lots of younger children, particularly that's the way they come into wanting to talk about the climate and the climate crisis. And this piece, we worked with a professional mask maker. They designed one side of the mask as the beautiful side of this animal that they cared about, and then looked at the things that were causing it damage on the other side, and then started having conversation with audiences about what they could do with that. Underneath, we have a piece called Codename Violet, which is what I'm going to be talking about a little bit throughout today as well, because this was actually a piece that we did with Greenpeace. We made this piece about 5 years ago, and it was in connection to their Ditch Diesel campaign. And they asked us if we would work with a group of our young people, the Young Coneys, to create some playful kind of pieces that could be part of their Ditch Diesel campaign and go to a country gala dinner. And they made some amazing games. And if we have time, I will show you a very short video of what they did as we turned up at this dinner, and really try to play with those dinner guests and see how they responded to it. But we've been working with Greenpeace for a number of years in different ways, and we have, over the last couple of years, been working with them on the Climate Agency box. So at Coney, we've made a number of pieces which use kind of escape room style games as a way to connect with school groups. So we design boxes which you have to break into rather than break out of. And inside of those are the materials and resources that we use to facilitate a program. We started this process with a piece with the Barbican a long time ago now, which was around playful activism, but that was exploring mental health and well-being, and it was just at the end of lockdowns, and it was being used as something that we could digitally facilitate a group of young people and support teachers to be able to deliver this program. And that's what a lot of this work is about. It's not about us sending in artists to come and work in those spaces, but to give a playful toolkit which allows teachers and educational workforce to be able to deliver some of the programs that we're creating for them. So the Climate Agency box came out of our work with Greenpeace, and then wanting to explore how they could take climate activism into schools. Now, they wanted to explore how we could use our approach of playful activism and take that alongside their work to have conversations, particularly around climate justice within a school setting. So this is an 8-week program. We've done one pilot of this project in 3 secondary schools in Tower Hamlets, and we're going to be doing a second pilot in January in 2 schools in Tower Hamlets as well. And over the 8-week program, what happens are that young people and their teachers go on a process of learning about playful climate activism in their school and thinking about ways that they can actually take action within that school system. So we use a lot of game mechanics as a way to introduce how students can affect the change that they want to see in their world. So that involves us looking at how a game system can be modified, and then looking at using those same conversations to look at a school system. So we take, and I will take us through kind of beat by beat. I'm jumping ahead of myself. But through this, we're kind of opening up what system thinking might be so that students can understand where power is held and think about a creative intervention that could have a conversation with that power. And this is all built around this idea that we believe if you can modify a game system, you can modify any system. So I'm going to take you through kind of the beats of what happens during the Climate Agency box and the 8 sessions. So we start off our program with the game of the climate crisis. We've created a game which is the first thing that groups might do. I should say, first of all, that we've done this with a Year 9 class and Year 12 and a Year 13, and a Year 12 and a Year 13 class. So we start the first session with a game called the Extraction Economy game, which is a way that students can quite quickly have an understanding of climate justice and feeling the injustice of being we have a game where different groups can play as different fictional countries which have different power levels and also have different amounts of resources. And so, but surely as the game progresses, we notice that those with power and they are able to extract, and without having to pay as much, are able to extract from other countries. And quite quickly, we're able to see students feeling that injustice and then being able to have conversations about it. We then also open up conversations about what their action might be, what their identity is as a group. So we start to look at a game which is about finding out the most interesting thing this group all have in common and finding a name that will become the heart of their action that they will take down the line. Our second session is all about landing with the context of climate justice, and particularly the links between racism and the climate crisis. And we've been doing this with the help of Greenpeace and also the help of Maya Rose Craig, and using a video that Greenpeace have done. And what we do is that this is a digital platform that the teacher is able to use to have conversations with their students, to kind of introduce this and start to have good conversations about something that we might not have the context for at the start. We then start to introduce, as I say, this is also looking at game mechanics. So we introduce playing a game and then looking at ways that we can change it. And this session 3 looks at the fact that as we all know, the climate crisis is a big thing, and students having to focus on lots of different parts of this, we might not be able to find what do we want to focus on. So what we do is we use a game as a way to focus on something specific that matters them by looking at global activists and thinking about which of these different topics are the ones that impact and you would impact you in your local area and you would like to see have a change in your school. In session 4, we start understanding power, and this is an important part of the group discussing kind of like where they sit as a group, and also starting to understand, like, they map the school. So the same way that we have introduced the game in session 2, we use game mechanics as a way to draw out a map of their school. Who are the players in the school? Who has power in this school? What are the rules that are playing out? And how could we change this system to make it better? Particularly with a focus on whatever we've decided to choose as what we want to change in this school. In session 5, we look at a lot of different campaign tools. So we worked with an organization called Advocacy Academy to look at how we can use language around what is the ask of your action, and using worthwhile winnable, which is a tool which we use to try to work out whether our action is very worthwhile, and if it is winnable. It says it on the tin there we go. And worthwhile, sometimes, as we all know, right, the most worthwhile actions probably might not be the most winnable, and sometimes the most winnable ones might not be as worthwhile. And so having this conversation with students and trying to work out what's the sweet spot, what's the thing that we feel we can do right now which will actually have some meaningful change, but is something that we can win together. That's an important part of activism. It's an important part of playing games as well. As you can see, session 6, we start going into making. Making is about pulling together kind of the skills and the creative interests that those young people have. So what are the things that in session 3, we've kind of asked them about? What do they already do? Are they good at drawing? Are they good at writing songs? Are they good at folding up origami and making little paper planes? What is it that you're good at and special at? And using those as a way that we could make a playful action. So our playful activism is particularly focused around the idea of, and this is actually something that we share with Greenpeace, thinking about that action as a gift. So can we make a gift that would be something for the individual to receive, and then what we will think about is how, using all of our skills, we can then use that to have a conversation with that power, and to have the change that we want to see. Session 7 is delivery. Session 8 is the power of the gift, and we tell the story of that. And I'm speeding through because I realized the time very quickly there, which is nice. But all of this links, and I'm going to tell you about some of the outputs because I think that sums up what we actually did. So codename Strawberry Sweets, because all of the group liked strawberry sweets. Strawberry Sweets actually involved the students deciding they wanted to focus on changing the packaging in their school. So looking at the fact that they had a lot of good compostable packaging, but they didn't compost it in the right way. So therefore it wasn't doing the job. So what the students did was that they looked at the power in the school and they targeted the person that they thought they could have the impact on this. Head teacher's great, but maybe it's not a worthwhile and a winnable person to reach. They targeted the deputy head teacher, and that they knew that that person was very approachable and also could link with the senior leadership team. And what we did was actually, some of those students told me they were excellent at making sandwiches. They lied to me. They were awful at making sandwiches, but it was a great thing that we could all tie together about packaging that they needed. And we made his favorite sandwich. We organized a meeting, which no one was there except for this sandwich. And then at that meeting, we mapped out a pathway for him to create change in that school. And it all started with a phone call. All he had to do was there was a message on there, which he had to text this number, and then he got a phone call. And on that phone call was a audio message from our students asking him to make a call to Vegware, and Vegware we'd already consulted with them that they offer free consultation and that there could be a conversation there. The fantastic thing out of this and the output is that the Swanley senior leadership team and Vegware held multiple meetings and have found ways that they can make that change. What we wanted to show here is that one call could ripple through to mean something that would have a wider impact on the rest of Tower Hamlets. I'm going to skim through quickly. I don't understand TikTok particularly, but I'll show this because this sums up this group.
It's really not that bad. It just needs a little shaping.
They made this.
I love it.
I mean, I don't understand the TikTok reference, but that goes straight over my head. But anyway, this group, codenamed Sick, focused on fast fashion, and the outcome of this, they made this whole thing and they delivered it to the person they wanted to reach, and they ran their first on-campus swap shop in May 2024, which is a student-led swap shop as well, so that every time it can be rerun by a student representative, even when these students leave, which is fantastic. I'm going to speed through just to show the next one, codename Fruffles, which was about waste pollution. They made this amazing little package and this box which opened up, which was about the fact that they had the waste system at that school just needed to be addressed. And on the USB, there was inside this, there was a PowerPoint that explained kind of what they wanted the senior leadership and the head teacher to do. And the head teacher has now set up a teacher and student kind of climate activist group to attend meetings with her. So fantastic kind of outputs as part of this. I'm not going to go through it. Oh, look, there it fell. That's great. On to the next one. I won't go through these and I will show you the evaluation report, send you the evaluation report afterwards. But some nice things said, and also Greenpeace said some nice things. That's great. But I will just say, so what we're going on to next is we're running this pilot, the second pilot within schools, and looking at ways that we can package this up in a way that is really clear and accessible for teachers to be able to run inside their schools themselves. We're also been working with Shanna and looking at ways, because we ran a version of this without a box, which is actually the best way to do this, at UCL with some students there. And that was really exciting as a way to think about how we can use the same toolkit as a way to package up and to reach different groups in different settings. I think that is my time, but if I have 1 minute, I will show you a video of Codename Violet. Shanna's smiling. Great. I'll take that as a win. So here we go. This is the video, and it's only 1 minute long, and this was from about 5 pre-pandemic, so however long that was.
We're going down to the fancy car industry dinner to provide health checks. That diesel cars are making people's lungs yucky and bad.
Okay, I'll take that.
Sir, is your event
No, thank you.
It's important because children's lungs are being the most affected by air pollution. They should listen to us because we're doctors.
Yes.
It's good to cheat when it comes to your health. The car industries are still working with diesel because they might not know how bad it is. The air is probably the most important thing on earth, and we don't want to ruin it.
So just to say, and to wrap up with that, and that was one of most influential nights of my life anyway as well, and about how we used play at that in that piece of activism, and how we've used that throughout all of our work going forward, and how play can be a really accessible way for young people, for students, as a way to think about how they can, how they have agency and how they can change their world. And yeah, really excited about ways that playful activism can feature in lots of different ways throughout. So thank you so much for having me. Can I stop sharing? End show and stop sharing. There we go.
Thank you, Toby. Yeah, it's great. And thank you everyone for putting questions in the chat. So we'll answer those at the end. We'll go through for both of the speakers. So we're going to move on now to Louise, who's an educational psychologist who specializes in climate. Right?
Thank you, Shanna, and thank you so much, Toby. My head's just like buzzing with all the ideas you've shared. It's really inspiring and actually totally relates to a part of what I'm going to be talking around. So yeah, thank you. I will share screen and introduce myself and say a little bit about what I'm going to be talking about. So let's do this. Okay, yeah, so thank you so much for having me. My name's Dr. Louise Edgington, and I'm as has been said, I'm a sort of climate specialist educational psychologist. That came about initially because I did a physics degree, which included atmospheric physics, energy studies, climate physics, and then took that with me when I was a secondary school teacher. But then after retraining as an educational psychologist, I still really clung on to this question of how can we prepare children and young people to thrive in the world as it is today and as it will be in the next 10, 20 years. I don't need to tell you guys that, you know, things are changing so fast that I know our education systems and pedagogies need to change at the same pace, if not a little bit faster. And so, yeah, I think this question it's such an important one that I'm now really full-time working in this space, trying to bring this sort of psychology to climate education in particular. And I've got the little symbol of the key there, really just to highlight that I'm going to be talking about climate education in general, but really trying to bring that psychological lens to this framework that I'm going to be sharing today. I've also got little symbols there of a sort of care and teachers. It's so important, I think, for me to preface any talk with a real heartfelt recognition that there are so many teachers out there who are working incredibly hard under very difficult circumstances. And, you know, I take my hats off to you, and I do really want to emphasize that anything I share today is like in an ideal world, best practice suggestion. The last thing I want to do is to give teachers more stress. So for that reason, it's so important to take care of our own needs as educators and to really prioritize our own well-being. This relates to the oxygen mask principle, which I like to talk about. You may have heard of it, this idea that, you know, ironically from aviation, we have to fit our own oxygen mask first, make sure that we're okay before we're able to hold space and contain difficult feelings for a child or young person. So yeah, I'm going to be looking at the framework of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, really just to get us thinking about the whole needs of any child or young person, and indeed of any adult. I'm sure some of you will be aware of it, but I can find it to be quite a useful framework for having conversations with people who are maybe not quite convinced for the reasoning behind some thinking behind climate education. Whole needs, whole school approach. It's, when I say whole school, again, it's an acknowledgement that we, you guys are probably aware by now, we can't have just one keen bean in a school trying to affect change. It's such a difficult task to do that on your own, and it leads to burnout. So, you know, again, we're talking about in an ideal world, the whole context of all the teachers and really all the community would be thinking in this way. So let's take a look at it. I'll just run through this quickly because I do have a sense that you're probably aware. You know, classic psychological theory of human needs that are pretty much universal for everybody. Now, traditionally in education, we might have been perhaps focused on the competence piece, you know, that star there, thinking about, you know, what do children need to learn, the content. But nowadays, I really do know that pretty much all schools are very well focused on all of these areas. So down at the bottom, physical needs, you know, we do things like breakfast clubs. Safety and security, we have very robust safeguarding procedures in place, and you know, things like anti-bullying policies, keeping children safe. They have to have that in place in order to learn and develop appropriately. Connection and belonging, again, pastoral care, nurture groups. And I think any good teacher understands the value of having that trusting relationship with their class. And yeah, then at the top, self-esteem and competence. That's really about, are we teaching them relevant things, and are we giving them opportunities for success so that they develop that sort of self-efficacy belief when it comes to trying difficult things. Self-expression and empowerment. Now, you've probably seen at the top there, normally Maslow would have referred to self-actualization, but I feel that when we're talking about young people, it's probably more appropriate to refer to this authentic self-expression. Are children feeling safe enough to be able to say their bit, and do they have a sense that when they do speak up or do something, it has an impact, you know, what they do matters in the world. So that's how I'd refer to that one. Let's look then at how this classic psychological theory of what children need to be well and good and healthy and develop, what does that look like at a time of the climate and ecological crisis? What might we have to be providing for them initially, additionally, that perhaps isn't necessarily already in place? Just moving my screen around. Okay, so you'll see here I've color-coded this. And this, you know, it's not written in stone. This is just what I am noticing and what I'm thinking. In red, you'll see there that actually I do think a lot of the DFE strategy as it currently stands kind of does go some way towards addressing children's needs in regards to the climate and ecological crisis, but it doesn't go quite far enough. So I'm just going to run through it from the bottom up to the top and try and weave in some additional considerations that I think would really help. So down at the bottom, physical needs. Clearly in schools, as many people are already doing, with half of the UK schools at risk of flooding, we need to be keeping children physically safe and protected. And again, heat waves are a really big part of that. On a hot day, there's a statistic I read that our test performance is going to drop 20% between a 20-degree and a 30-degree day. Heat waves affect our health and they affect our learning, and so does obviously a dramatic event like a flood. Safety and security, moving up. Again, for me, this is about relational security. Can children see that the adults that are supporting them are taking their future seriously? Are they safeguarding the world and nature for young people, or indeed for us now? It's very much a case of, do I feel that these adults have my back? Because, you know, when that's not happening, we have this additional sort of moral injury taking place where children feel that they've kind of been not taken care of adequately. And I am now beginning to hear that likened to abuse, actually. So bottom two layers there, just to say, I think it's great, you know, that this is in the DFE strategy. And all I would say, sustainability leads are going to have to think very carefully, and I would highly recommend checking out some of the psychology around engagement, like how do we engage communities effectively so that they're on board with this? And if they can understand a little bit about the sort of psychology of resistance to climate action, I don't like to use the term denial anymore, but understanding that can really help. Actually, if you're in the sustainability lead role and you come up against that resistance in communities, to kind of work with that can be really helpful. Okay, so looking at connection to nature and each other. Again, DFE strategy, it does emphasize connection to nature, and that's fantastic. We absolutely, can't live without the natural world. We need it for our weather systems and our food security. What I feel is missing is this connection to each other. We really need to be emphasizing that we are all entirely interdependent and reliant on each other. And certainly, events like COVID really show us that when things get tough, the communities that are resilient are the ones that really look out for each other and care for each other. Still within connection and belonging, just to say this, this for me is the piece that is explicitly missing. And I did mention this at the Climate Ambassadors event the other day to the senior civil servant. I said, there is not enough recognition of the climate distress that can be provoked at the point of learning about this, and indeed not enough provision for the teachers who are having to hold these anxieties. And we really need to be giving teachers the time and space to deal with their own feelings, so that then they can be, I suppose, better regulated to contain a child's anxieties. We need to be teaching emotional regulation strategies woven into lessons, I feel. It needs to be a part of our vocabulary about how we move through difficult emotions into action or other ways of being. Yeah, okay, so the top two layers are self-esteem and competence. This for me is about, are they being taught the relevant things? It's not just about climate education, it is also about, as you guys know, climate justice, psychology, and our social systems. And this is like why I love Toby's example of doing this in a way that is very engaging for children and allows them to engage in the top layers here of debate and critical reasoning and project learning through doing things that are chosen by them. Definitely that when we look at the very top layer, self-expression and empowerment, there is so much misinformation online at the moment. We're all living in our own little echo chambers of social media or whatever information we're consuming. It's an incredibly difficult skill to discern all of that noise, hold a lot of uncertainty and a lot of different opinions, and come to a balanced, informed opinion, which is really what we need in our citizens, certainly in education. Okay, a lot of talking, apologies. So yeah, all of that to say, in an ideal world, this framework could be helpful to hang on to when we're thinking of, am I meeting the whole child's needs? Because if we're skipping any one of those, we are kind of letting down what a child needs in order to develop into a happy, healthy, thriving adult. Obviously, it also very much depends on the educators. And so for this reason, I come back to the oxygen mask principle again. I do think CPD and sort of teacher support has to come first. There's a very fine line that we need to tread as educators to get the messaging right. And I won't go through it, but you can see in the sort of cross column there are some risks that I'm hearing, from parents and other people, where climate education can sort of not be helpful. So yeah, I would invite anyone to check out these free guides that are on my website that really speak to these psychological matters about climate change engagement, eco-emotions, and that relational resilience, how to create a secure attachment with children and give them that age appropriate information at the right time, taking their lead. Yeah, so do check those out. They're free. They're also up on Sustainability Support for Education. And yes, I'd love to dive into it more, because each of these I do give like an hour-long talk on. It's like a skill that I think we should all be literate in, how to move through, manage, enjoy our emotions almost. And finally, yeah, just to say again, if I were a senior leader, I would very much be prioritising my staff wellbeing, and just flagging up that I do offer talks around this, and also a free monthly climate staff room space for educators to come and just have that space to process their own feelings, so that we're not unconsciously projecting or sort of spewing any of our own anxieties onto the children we're teaching. It's really important to have that space for educators, so that you're coming as a clean slate almost. You're not having an emotional hangover. Okay, I think that is it.
Wow,
Got my plan
honestly,
15
you
minutes.
two have just filled our heads up with so much. I mean, that's about 5 years worth of reading. And so incredible, both of you. Wow, thank you so much for coming.